I call the Tuesday, December 5th, 2023 meeting of the Louisa County Board of Supervisors to order.
Mr. Chairman, we need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 to discuss the performance and assignment of employees and public officers and appointees, and pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3 to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose for a future emergency communications tower location in the county, and pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7, 8, and 29 to consult with legal counsel and staff about agreements and related matters with Amazon Data Services and also the Louisa County Regional Airport.
Been properly moved and seconded that we go into closed session. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're in closed session.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. We go back into open session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're back into open session. I will now poll members to certify that to the best of your knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and as identified in the motion for which the closed meeting was convened were discussed and considered by the board. If any member believes that the board varied from the purposes stated for the closed meeting, please state so and the reason prior to casting a vote. Mr. Gentry.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Purcell.
Yes.
All right, we're back into open session. This is the Tuesday, December the 5th, 2023 meeting of the Louisa County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to welcome those who are in attendance here in the public meeting room and those who are watching online. We appreciate you being here today. We will open the meeting, as we always do, with an invocation today by Mr. Barnes, and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would wish to join us, please stand.
Let us pray. Most High God, we feel your humble servants tonight. We ask that you give us the wisdom to do the works, which is good for the citizens of Louisa County and pleasing to your heart. We ask that you bless our troops that are both far and near, Father God, that they protect this great country in we live. Keep us together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first item of business on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
and your call as chair on where to put this, but I'd like to add a discussion on government pay increases and board compensation.
All right, let's make that number 4 under discussion items, compensation of the Board of Supervisors.
Also, in addition to the consent agenda, is on the table in front of you a resolution to approve and award a contract for front-end load solid waste hauling and disposal services to consent, please.
Okay, are there any other changes? Mr. Barnes made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that we adopt the agenda as amended.
All right. We are not doing electronic voting this evening, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is approval of the minutes.
so move.
Second.
Been properly moved and second. We approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is the approval of the bills.
So move.
Second.
Been properly moved and second. We approve the bills. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is the approval of the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is recognitions. We do have a recognition tonight recognizing Patrick Hanley for his service and contributions to Louisa County, and I saw Mr. Hanley was here. Pat, if you'd come down to the front.
Have you stand right up here front and center in front of the in front of the dais and face the audience, if you'd be so kind, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, members of the public. This is a resolution recognizing Patrick Hanley for his dedicated service on the Management Oversight Group, otherwise known as the MOG. Whereas the MOG was established to collaborate with the Fire and Emergency Medical Services Chief concerning the delivery of fire, rescue, and medical services, and to communicate issues of importance to the Fire and EMS Chief concerning individual organizations or the department as a whole. And whereas Patrick Hanley was appointed to the Management Oversight Group and served from February of 2017 through October of 2023. And whereas Patrick Hanley demonstrated extensive knowledge regarding fire and EMS needs throughout the community and was willing to help the public better understand the county's associated efforts. And whereas during his tenure, Patrick Hanley exemplified kindness and courtesy towards fellow members and citizens, and led by example, offering unique insight and working to build consensus even under the most challenging situations to best serve the needs of Louisa's citizens. Now therefore be it resolved that the Louisa County Board of Supervisors hereby recognizes and extends its appreciation to Patrick Hanley for his dedicated service and representation on the Management Oversight Group. Mr. Chairman.
Pat, congratulations.
Thank you.
I do want to say, for those of you who are here, the MOG, or the Management Oversight Group, which probably most of you in this room have never heard of, is an important function of the county because it works with our volunteer and career staff and our volunteer fire and EMS chiefs, our fire chief, to make sure that we deliver one of the basic functions of county government, and that's emergency services. So those meetings, which nobody ever knows go on, really, on a Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Third Thursday is an extraordinarily important function, and it's one of those things where that citizen representation is what helps make sure that we deliver the services that we're supposed to do. And as a Middle District resident, I appreciate your service to the county, and want to say thank you very much on behalf of Louisa County. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to say a few words, you can have a minute or two.
I'll be brief.
It was a privilege and an honor to serve the citizens of Louisa County in support of the fire and rescue, our first responders. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll miss it. That's all.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it very much. Yes, sir.
Pat, before you leave, I just wanted to take the opportunity on behalf of myself and all the citizens of the Louisa District as well. You know, this award is great and certainly justified for all the work and time and effort you've put on the MOG. But everybody who knows Pat knows he serves this community in a lot of other ways other than that. So he is kind of the definition of enlightened citizenship, working to make Louisa better on multiple fronts. So I appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do for this county. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Well, and I will say before you go, Pat, again, thank you. And to Mr. Purcell's point, you're now involved in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library that is serving children across the county, improving literacy. So you continue to make contributions to the county, and it's people like you that make Louisa County a great place.
And we just signed up our 484th child.
Oh,
Right.
exciting.
Our goal is 1,500.
And you've been at it, what now, 3 weeks?
No, since the middle of October.
Okay. Okay.
We got our charter in the middle
But
of October.
your big public launch at the library was about 3 weeks ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you. We appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your support.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Thank you.
All right. Now we'll move on to public comment. During the public comment period, I do have cards. I'll call your name to the podium. You can speak on anything during public comment except anything that's in a public hearing. We do have one public hearing tonight, so if you're here to speak on the rezoning on the public hearing, wait till the public hearing. When you come to the podium, state your name, your voting district. I'll start the time. I'll give you a warning when you have 15 seconds left. The first person that I have is Catherine Goodman.
All right, first one for the evening. Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm Catherine Goodman, and I'm here to represent the Blue Ridge Health District, the Louisa County Health Department. And unfortunately, I don't live in Louisa County, but I do love coming out here.
That's good.
You're going. All right. Well, I'm here to just let you all know and to thank you tremendously for helping with the Louisa County Health Department's move. We have officially moved to our new location just across the street at 101 Woolfolk Ave. And our environmental health office is over there, as well as our clinical and WIC services. And that move began on Friday, and we are continuing to move. All of the furniture arrived today. Our environmental health office will officially open tomorrow to the public. So we are open for vital records, septic, well systems, all of the usual environmental health services. Our WIC services, which is the Women, Infant, and Children, will open next week on the 10th, and our clinical services will open later this month pending a review of our laboratory once that's up and running, as we're putting a lot of pieces together. So just thank you all. I wanted to give a special thank you to Christian and Chris Kuhn, and especially Anderson Wolfuk, who have been tremendously helpful with this move. It has been a lot of moving pieces, no pun intended, but we have spent months and months preparing for this, and the new site is really a wonderful location, and we're excited to be there. And we will be hosting an open house reception for the public and for all of you to come see the new space in mid-January. So we will share that information as it comes, as we would love for you all to see the new location. So that's all I have this evening, but thank you all for that support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Marie Jones.
Hello, my name is Marie Jones, and my voting district is Mineral. I live on Peach Grove Road, and I'm here to have voice my concerns regarding the solar panel. I don't know if you call it a farm or platform or project. I have major concerns regarding the benefit to the county or the benefit to the residents on Peach Grove Road. I mean, if the electricity is not going to be used here in the county, I don't understand the purpose for it or how anybody's going to benefit. And I do understand that every landowner has rights to profit, make money off of their land and whatever they see fit. But once again, if it's something that's being brought to the public and for the community, it should also serve the community as well. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am. You have a
She
fan
had
club. You
something to
brought your own
say.
fan club.
She wanted her 3 minutes.
Next is Donna Washington.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Donna Washington, Peach Grove Road. I vote up at Blue Ridge Shores Firehouse. I'm first going to speak on behalf of Alita Stewart Bryan. She's not here, and her land is adjacent to where they want the solar system to go. And she wrote, it was stated on page 34, mentioned above, that we met with neighbors of Peach Grove Road directly across the street from the proposed project. We were able to talk with the majority of the Peach Grove Road adjoining neighbors, with the exception of 2 that were not home. Well, everybody on our road says nobody talked to them to say that they were happy to go along with the program. And somehow, Bridget Kelly sent Alita Stewart a text this morning. She doesn't know who gave her her number because she has no idea who Bridget Kelly is. As for me, our meeting at First Bible Way Church, the comment was made that the land in Louisa is no good. I don't know how many people here are natives of Louisa County. Louisa County is agriculture. If I see a mason jar, I have flashbacks. That's how many I wash, because our land is good. We grew crop. You all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Ed Jarvis.
Ed Jarvis, Mineral District. I just wanted to pass along my season's greetings to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for your job. Mr. Purcell, Mr. Gentry, I know this is your last hurrah. I appreciate everything that you've done, and at least wanted you to hear it from the mayor from the town of Mineral.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Vicky Hart.
Vicki Hart, Louisa District. I have several things. First, I'd like to thank Engaged to Louisa Tammy for letting me know that the meeting was tonight, as many people were not aware of that. If it wasn't for her, I would miss it, and you would not get to see my beautiful face. Second, VFW Auxiliary is sponsoring scholarships for kids kindergarten through 12th grade. I have given them to James Smith and posted them at the libraries, and it's just information for you that these are huge scholarships that they can apply for, up to $15,000. I'm in the Medical Reserve Corps. I got activated today to go move the health department. Now that I know you're moved, I'm going to say you don't need me. Parade, thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm on the Louisa Town Council, but I can't speak for them. So as a person in the parade and at the tree lighting, thank you all for being there. And last, I received an email a couple hours ago from the Army Corps of Engineers regarding flooding in the county and the town. I agree with the lady that spoke. Our land is great. I used to have a great garden in my property where I grew food, and I can't. I cannot do that any longer. Due to my ongoing efforts as a private citizen, I have been provided the recommendations from the Army Corps of Engineers today, which I have forwarded to you. I still have some answers I have to give back to them. Because I have not had time, because we had this meeting tonight. They will receive those answers, but I know Mr. Purcell wanted to get information before he left the board, and they provided recommendations for what we have to do going forward. And I sent it to all of you. Your planning commission email does not work. It bounced back. Thank you.
Thank you. Garney Horn.
My name is Garney Horn. I'm in the Mineral District. There's a proposed utility-scale solar facility planned for Peach Grove Road, which you've heard earlier. This is a residential neighborhood with agriculture mixed in. We even have a new sign that says Gold Mine Agriculture and Forestry District that was just put up in the past year. This facility gives the residents of Peach Grove many concerns from setting a precedent of having a utility-scale solar facility so close to Lake Anna, and the concerns about erosion and sediment control coming from the 20 acres of the 60 that they've acquired, and another 20 acres of runoff from across the street that comes through a 30-inch drain pipe under the road. You take the 20 and 20, 40 acres of drainage, every drop of water that doesn't go into the ground goes into Gold Mine Creek, which goes into North Anna. 12 years ago, when they timbered this same land, we had nothing but runoff with every hard rain. Gold Mine Creek all the way up was muddy. We ended up with a foot of sediment. It used to be 5 feet off the end of my dock. Now it's 4 feet, and my neighbors can tell you the same thing. We don't want this to happen again, so I would ask that we have an erosion and a sediment control be in place and be reviewed before this project moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Geraldine Ellis.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for your service to Louisa County. We appreciate each and every one of you. I am here to
Miss Ellis, I know I introduced you, but you have to say it for the record.
Geraldine Ellis, and I'm in the Green Springs voting district, and I'm in here because I have lifetime at Peach Grove Road. So I'm here concerning the solar panel that's proposed for Peach Grove Road, the farm there. And I'm here to show my concerns, to discuss the concerns regarding the erosion part of it, the safety issues that are there, as well as the buffering and the runoff into Lake Anna. That community means a lot to me. I was born and raised there. I've lived there all my life. My church is still there. So I have concerns with all the issues that we discussed, especially at the meeting that you facilitated for us. So I'm just here to support those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Robin Horn.
Hi, my name is Robin Horn, and I'm in the Mineral District. I'm here to express my concerns for the utility-scale solar project proposed on Peach Grove Road. The runoff from this project will flow into Goldmine Creek and then directly into Lake Anna. Lake Anna is an impaired waterway already, and we can't swim part of the summer due to the algae bloom, to which the state is providing $1 million to try to fix this problem. This solar facility will only add to the problems. Lake Anna should be protected because it is an important part of Louisa's economy. The CUP for this facility was pulled from the Planning Commission agenda this month due to many discrepancies. I give a lot of credit to your staff for looking hard at this project and asking questions. I encourage you to ask for erosion and sediment plan before the CUP is approved. I understand this is not the normal way the county does business, but I believe Lake Anna is important to Louisa County, and we cannot afford to make a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ken Ingersoll.
My name is Ken Ingersoll, and I'm in the Mineral District. This is the third meeting that I've had on this that I've gone to, and at the last one of the residents, I kind of summed up a lot of things, and they thought it was pretty much on point and asked me to present them to you all, so here I am. First, let me say I'm not opposed in a general way against solar projects. They have a place in our electric grid, and I'm a finance professional by training and tend to look at things fairly analytically. I found this project by looking at it, and I summarized things, and to me, it becomes pretty clear. I understand the property owner has rights to request the board to consider an alternate use for his property, and the board has a number of competing interests and factors to consider in their evaluation of whether to approve that alternate use. I don't think anything I'm going to share with you tonight is going to be earth-shattering or new to you, but I hope it's helpful in kind of summarizing some of the key issues as I see them. On the pro side, the proposed alternate use generates a higher tax base. I understand that. I believe I've heard estimates of $10,000 to $15,000 a year over the duration of a 35 to 40-year project life. That's not insignificant as a standalone number, but when you look at it in the context of the county government's budget, it's really not a big needle pusher. It also will help the Commonwealth of Virginia with its clean energy goals. This is a relatively small project. It's not going to make a huge difference in helping the Commonwealth achieve its goals. The cons, on the other side of this, tend to be rather lengthy and, in my opinion, pretty substantial. First, while there have been many projects, solar projects approved in the county, this project is unique and it's the first one sited adjacent to Lake Anna. This is significant for many reasons. Lake Anna has been described as the economic engine of Louisa County, and up until AOS comes in and starts running, it's the single biggest contributor to our financial health of this county. As you know, a solar field is made up of lots of impervious panels that do nothing but funnel water to collection points. While the environmental and soils work hasn't been done, we do have some idea of what they're going to look like because the farmer next to him has had soils work done, and his soil has been determined to be highly erodible and is subject to erosion. There's no reason to believe that this project is going to be any different. He's right next door to it. It has 2 drainage swales, and the base of the project has a creek that feeds right into Goldmine Creek. We know Lake Anna has some significant issues right now. The last several years have had extended periods of harmful algae blooms, rendering the safe unlikely to use for substantial periods of time. Goldmine Creek has had a significant erosion problem as well. As Garnia just mentioned, we've lost a foot of water depth over the 40 years that this development has been in place.
15 seconds.
This developer is new in this. They've only had experience in Texas and Georgia. This is not new. I worked for a company that has reviewed 30,000 projects, and new typically means higher risk and things go wrong. They just happen because you just don't know. The board has learned this. They've learned new things. They've required new things for CUP, and you'll learn more 5 years from now. I just hope it's not.
Thank you, sir.
On the efforts of this project.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other cards for public comment. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board during public? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to take this opportunity.
Gary, introduce yourself.
Hi. Gary Griffith. I live in the Mineral District, 815 Almaganel Drive. In the last 40 years, and being here 40 years, you're a come here. I've just watched as the more and more regulations and more change takes place. Sometimes they're really good for us, and sometimes I feel they aren't. But the one I'm not understanding is the riparian rights on the shores of Lake Anna. It just really confuses me. In the past, our property line stopped at the Dominion Power property, and then you had your easement that you could use, and you applied for your permits to use Dominion Power's property there as you do it. We have so many coves on this lake. When you add riparian rights, which means you have 4 lots coming down on a cove, and then their property line is deemed to extend across the water, they're just crossing. I don't even know how, it's hard to imagine how you regulate that. In the past, things were divided on the cove. We kept 30% at 30, kept our opening. And if somebody owned the entire back of the cove, it was no problem to build a boathouse on it. Now, if you take the property lines on the cove once again, and someone's property line happens to angle to the water to make sense for their home or their view, now you've got that property line coming back the cove, this coming across. And that's just something I wish you got, that could be taken into consideration of, just not sure why we changed, why all of a sudden we started with this very, very confusing requirement in trying to successfully lay out your docks. I've done about 18 communities on the lake. We always plan it out so people aren't crowded, and just something I'd like you guys to give some thought to, staff and supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, is there anyone else that wishes to address the board before we close public comment? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public comment period, and we'll move on to our information and discussion items. First item is a presentation on fiscal year 2023, Louisa County's annual comprehensive financial report, and we have Mr. Michael Lupton with Robinson, Farmer, and Cox. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, my name is Michael Lupton. I am one of the partners in the Charlottesville office of Robinson, Farmer, Cox, and I've had the pleasure of serving as the partner in charge of this audit engagement for the last several years. Here to present on the fiscal year 2023 audit, and I have a PowerPoint presentation here that we'll run through a few slides. First, a brief overview. Required communications with the governing body. There's a letter that that's in the front of the packet that you have in front of you. It's a loose letter. That's the governance letter, excuse me, that will kind of briefly cover some significant points there. And then second, audit results. We'll cover audits, our auditors' opinions, and also the reports, and some financial highlights throughout the presentation. This is just a picture of the governance letter that you have in front of you. There are a few major points on the governance letter to cover. The first I'd like to cover is the difference between management and auditors' responsibilities. The financial statements are management's responsibilities. The documents you have in front of you is the responsibility of management. Management is also responsible for developing and maintaining a system of internal controls conducive to presenting and preparing the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Our responsibilities as auditors is to perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and also ultimately to render an opinion based on adequate information that we have gathered throughout the audit process. I'm pleased to report there are several other items to note on the letter, but I'm pleased to report that there were no difficulties encountered in dealing with management and performing the audit. Any uncorrected or any corrected misstatements have been corrected, and all audit adjustments have been posted. Pleased to report there were no disagreements with management in the application of accounting principles. I'm also pleased to report that, and to our knowledge, management has not sought a second opinion on any audit-related matter. And further, there are no other significant matters to address at this time. The financial report document you have in front of you is the annual comprehensive financial report. It has 4 sections: the introductory section, the financial section, the statistical section, and finally the compliance section. And each of those are labeled by the tabs on the document. The first item to note here is our opinion on the financial statements. It's that on page 1 of the independent auditor's report. It is an unmodified opinion. That is, in other words, a clean opinion. Essentially what that means is that the financial statements are, as presented, are materially correct in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. You will find management's discussion and analysis in that document as well. It is a very nice narrative overview of the financial report. It was prepared by Wanda and Christian. That provides, a brief analysis of the financial data and also the happenings for the fiscal year. And if you only have a few minutes to review this document, that's where I recommend you focus your attention because it is very valuable. Exhibit 3 is the balance sheet of the county, and it's presented on the modified accrual basis of accounting, which is the same basis as the county's budget. As you will note on Exhibit 3, there's combined ending fund balance for all governmental funds of approximately $103 million. The general fund balance total was approximately $75.8 million. Of that, there was unassigned fund balance of a little under $42 million. And ultimately, unassigned, assigned, and committed fund balances, which are all 3 categories available for appropriation at the discretion of you all, the board, amounted to about $103 million. And this all, of course, was as of June 30, 2023. Exhibit 5 is the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in the fund balances for the fiscal year. Again, this is prepared on the same basis as the county's budget. The combined fund balances for the governmental funds increased by about $4.63 million in the fiscal year. The general fund balance increased by approximately $2.2 million, and that increase was mostly linked to a combination of increased property tax collections, increased other local tax collections, increased interest earned on bank deposits, and budgeted savings within departmental budgets. And again, all of the information that's presented here is obviously in the document, financial statements, but also discussed in the management's discussion and analysis as well, which you'll find a brief analysis there. Exhibit 9, again, is prepared on the same basis as the county budget, and it's the statement of changes, but it's presented budget to actual. So it gives you an indication of how you all did from a revenue and expenditure standpoint as compared to both the original and the amended or revised final budget. The general fund revenues exceeded budget by about $3.8 million. General fund expenditures were under budget by about $14 million. So both on the positive end there. And again, analysis is provided in the management's discussion and analysis section. I'd like to move to a few different forms of information presented here in both graph and chart form. The first here is a bar graph of the general fund balance over the last 5 years. As you can see, there's been a steady increase to the unassigned fund balance. The unassigned fund balance is the tallest bar there. But also you'll see the committed and assigned items there at approximately sitting right around $15 to $20 million. Governmental fund revenues, specifically property taxes, I broke this out just because it skews the other the general fund or governmental fund revenues in presenting this in a line graph form. But you'll see here a consistent increase in the collections over the last 5 years for property taxes. And this is a line graph of the other governmental fund revenues. The largest in that category is intergovernmental, so state and federal revenues. And underneath that are other local taxes. So again, you'll see a steady increase in the collections of other local taxes. And just below that, charges for services, again, a steady increase over the last 5 years. And just presenting this in a pie chart form, you'll see property taxes made up about 68.5% of total governmental revenues for the year, and other local taxes at about 11.1%, and intergovernmental revenues at about 13%.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
At the 68.5% property taxes, how does that compare to other counties that you're involved with?
That's mostly in line with other counties that we work with. That obviously is the main source of revenue at almost every local government. And 68.5% is right in line with what we typically see.
Thank you.
Governmental fund expenditures. You will see the largest expenditure, again, is something that we typically see at almost all counties, is education. The education expenditures, again, increasing each year for the last 5 years. Steady increase in public safety expenditures, and small increases in health and welfare expenditures as well. And presenting the governmental fund expenditures in this pie graph here, pie chart, education expenditures, right around 41% of total expenditures. Again, that's usually the major expenditure at local governments in the Commonwealth. Public safety right around 25%, and health and welfare right around 11%. The statistical section that you'll find in your ACFR document provides a nice historical trend data of selected financial categories, but also provides some demographic data as well. So it's certainly a good spot to spend some time looking at the last 10 years of historical information and trend information for the county. The last part of the financial report document is the compliance section, that has two reports. One is our report on internal control and compliance. That is what we call a yellow book opinion. Essentially, we assess the control environment for any deficiencies as it pertains to our ability to accomplish our audit objectives. If we were to become aware of any deficiencies in the control process, we would be required to relay those to you. I'm pleased to report, however, that there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we noted in that process. The last letter you'll find in there is our report on the Uniform Guidance Compliance, which is the federal single audit compliance requirement. There were no instances of non-compliance that we noted in any of the federal grants that we audited in fiscal year 2023. And as listed here, we audited 6 different federal grants: the Child Nutrition Cluster, the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, or otherwise known as ARPA, Special Education Cluster, Education Stabilization Fund, the Medical Assistance Program, or Medicaid, and Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. So again, no instances of non-compliance that we noted over the audits of those programs. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have at this time.
Does anyone have any questions? I don't have any questions. I have a comment. That in my 6 years on the board that I've heard this report, what I hear is that Mrs. Colvin and her staff continue to do an outstanding job serving the citizens of Louisa County.
I agree. Yes, they do a great job. They very organized and always provide the information that we need in a very timely manner.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. All right. Next up is a discussion repeal of the county shoreline ordinance, and that is Mr. Kuhn.
You want me to take it?
Oh, well, I'm just reading what's on the agenda.
Sorry, Mr. Kuhn and I made a last-minute change on you. So, this is an item that's been discussed. We have met with some developers over the course of the summer, and Mr. Barnes and Chairman Adams have been part of those meetings. And I spoke with Mr. Gentry earlier this week as well. Louisa County is the only one of the 3 localities around Lake Anna that has a separate shoreline ordinance. And I salute Mr. Gentry and the folks who worked hard to develop that ordinance. Dominion appears to have adopted a very, very materially similar ordinance as well. We're starting to run into situations now, and you heard a citizen, Mr. Griffith, mention it earlier this evening, where in some of these tighter coves, the areas that people are allowed to build are becoming increasingly more difficult to work out, because we're not talking about big, long expansions of shorelines anymore. We're talking about, in many cases, the backs of coves where there are many lots that come out to that cove, and we want to ensure that there is access available for all the people who need that access. The situation is compounded by a little bit by the fact that based on our research and based on what Dominion is saying, the county really doesn't have direct control over what is built out over the water in terms of how it's oriented. The county does have control through a building permit process over whether or not something is built safely and in a compliant manner according to the Uniform Statewide Building Code. And so really when we look at this situation, we have a situation where the county is applying a set of ordinances and Dominion is also applying its set of rules that look exactly like the county's ordinances, and truly it's Dominion's property, and that's the way the other localities around the lake appear to treat it. And so I think, I don't want to speak for Mr. Barnes or Chairman Adams, but I think what we had talked about in our meetings over the summer was whether or not Louisa County needed to have a shoreline ordinance. As Mr. Gentry and I talked about earlier this week, and I don't want to put words in your mouth either, sir, and I certainly would salute Dominion continuing to consider input from the citizens, finding ways to balance the use of the lake by everybody who owns property around the lake, and I think from our communications with Dominion, they're willing to continue doing that. But this is going to be a question for the board as to whether or not you all want to continue to maintain a separate shoreline ordinance and try to keep a set of regulations that always looks like Dominion's use agreement for the lake. So the question for the board tonight would be whether or not you all, either tonight or at some point, want to direct the advertisement for the Planning Commission, because this is, the shoreline ordinance is part of Chapter 86 of the county's Code of Ordinances, to consider the repeal of the shoreline ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Berta?
In reading this, and I agree, I think what sort of prompted this, Mr. Griffith brought up riparian rights, and all of the subdivisions around the lake have use lines to the edge of the water, but not out into the water, which is dictated by Dominion. The only issue or question that I would like answered before we go repealing anything, and I agree we don't need duplicate things that Dominion's addressing, and I don't particularly care for most ordinances, but I do remember what prompted some of this was, if we remember back to a 15-acre development out on the water, at 208, that's when all of this sort of started. And I don't know whether Dominion has anything that addresses that, but I also remind this board that that lake is Dominion's, but so it's also in Louisa County. There are, in some of the discussion back when this ordinance, before it was enacted, was if we're not going to regulate, or we have no authority to regulate what's over the water, then somebody could come in and put a cell tower in the middle of a pond on some farm. That pond is on Louisa County land. It's in Louisa County. So I don't totally agree with the fact it's Dominion's lake, but by the same token, it's in Louisa County. And I'm fine with repealing it as long as we don't end up with some thing like a 15-acre development on the lake that was a real thing that was trying to be pushed through. It didn't happen, but there was a reason for the shoreline ordinance, and if Dominion is doing what that ordinance is, then I'm fine with repealing it. I just want to make sure that we don't end up with something that we wish we hadn't.
Mr. Gentry?
Just a little bit of history. Christian mentioned some of it, but in 2005, there was a committee formed. Unfortunately, I was chair of that committee, but it was formed by the Board of Supervisors because there were some safety issues in some of these coves. Now, those coves look entirely different from what they used to. You know, to me, having the end of a cove and having 10 to 12 property lines coming to the water is, I don't know how you ever going to manage that exactly right. But anyhow, I wanted to point out that the main reason for the shoreline management start committee was because of safety, and it was very simple. We had like Hickory Landing and Nor Landing, where they shared a cove, and there was no controls over who took over the cove. You'd have a dock go 2/3 of the way across. It'd mess up the flow of traffic. It'd mess up everything. So that's when the 1/3 rule came into play, which I think for the most part worked pretty well until things got so complicated. Because you can look at the maps now, and you got a waterfront lot, but you can't even get to the water. I mean, there's a lot of weird things going on there that we really don't have any control of. If the developer wants to try to sell those particular lots, I reckon it's his problem. But talking to Christian today and reviewing what the proposal is here, it kind of makes sense that you don't have duplication. But one concern that I have is we know what our ordinance is. We know what our authorities are. But when you look at the Dominion Energy, the title of their document is Dominion Energy's General Guidelines, Construction and Use Agreement. I don't feel real good anytime I hear guidelines used. I just feel just like our comp plan. It's a guideline, and it can be construed as maybe not being consistent sometimes. Who's authorizing, who's in control over it. I think you're exactly right as far as duplication. We don't need a duplication, but I have a little problem with their agreements calling it guidelines. How well is it going to be enforced? How consistent is it going to be enforced? If you don't take some of these things that's in their ordinance that's there for all the right reasons and be consistent with them, there could be further problems. That's my general opinion.
Mr. Good.
I think Mr. Barlow and Mr. Gentry bring up excellent points, and we have at least one committee that comes to mind that works with Dominion on an annual basis, and I wonder if part of this process of considering the future of the shoreline ordinance in Louisa County might not be a consideration of an annual committee to meet with Dominion, that the kickoff meeting could be, how are we not going to do what you said, how are we going to make sure that what you said doesn't happen? And the annual basis of that committee could be, in conjunction with some citizens, an annual meeting to review the shoreline ordinances and make sure that there's some public input if there needs to be tweaks or something like that. And I would be happy to work with Dominion at the board's direction.
And I can also tell you, of course, things change over it's been 15, 18 years. But when we first put together the committee, it was one of the better committees that I've seen in the county. We had representation from the developers, from the lake folks. We had 2 members from all those different groups, 2 members from the Planning Commission, 2 board members, 2 developers. I mean, all these people that were very interested at that time in shoreline management. And everybody, we kind of realized you couldn't have a perfect ordinance, but particularly because of the way the coves are shaped, et cetera, et cetera. But it was amazing how well that group worked on things. And and now a lot of those people aren't even around anymore. But there was a big effort to put together the ordinance the right way. And the main objective was safety.
Well, I would add before does anybody else have anything? I think everything that's been said here tonight is accurate. And a good point that Mr. Gentry brought up, that while Dominion may call theirs guidelines, at the end of the day, it's called a decision. And I think that the spirit behind the shoreline ordinance 18 years ago was probably needed. That's when the lake was kind of the wild, wild west. Now you're getting into some really, I was in a meeting with Mr. Eglin and the rest of the county staff, and you start extending property lines over the back of a cove, it looks like somebody's 100 people playing laser tag, shooting line. I mean, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. But and then once staff goes through that process, it goes to Dominion, who has the final say. So I think that we're duplicating effort. I think that it's eating up a tremendous amount of staff time. And at the end of the day, we don't have a final decision. Basically, what we have is a recommendation, which is sort of what we're talking about. I don't think we should completely disengage in this conversation with Dominion. But I would certainly be in favor of at least advertising this and sending it to the Planning Commission for their consideration on whether we should repeal the shoreline ordinance and see how that moves forward. Does anybody have an objection to that?
I don't have any problem with it going to the planning commission and starting this process. I just think we need to be cognizant of what could happen without the ordinance and really need to know what Dominion is how they're gonna enforce theirs, because like I say, they own the lake, but the lake is in Louisa County. And anybody else with a pond or large lake, they have to abide by the same rules as the county ordinance. And I think Dominion does as well.
Okay, all right. There's the direction.
Got it.
All right, next is a discussion of the Industrial Development Authority and the airport. I'll start this off and I'll pass it off to Mr. Goodwin. Louisa County is unique in the Commonwealth that our IDA also operates and manages our local airport. That's actually came about, had to have an act of the General Assembly to allow that. And there's been discussion, I've been told by folks who've been here far longer than me, for the last 18 years, off and on, is that the right place to have the IDA manage the airport? Should the airport come under the management of the county administration and back into totally under the county? Industrial Development Authority exists in most cases to encourage economic development in the county, to be a financing option and tool and vehicle. And there was a meeting last week with representatives from the IDA, representatives from the airport, representatives from the board, representatives from county administration to start the discussion. And I will emphasize that was the first official meeting on this, and that started the discussion to see where we could possibly go, what we wanted to do. There's been some documentation provided on possible direction of an advisory committee or something of that sort. And I personally believe, as the board's liaison to the IDA, that it is probably a really opportune time to look and see if we want to continue down the path that we're on, or to see if we want to make a break from the airport management to bring it under the county or leave it with the IDA. There's no action requested here tonight. This is public comment. I think there's follow-up meetings with IDA staff, county staff, airport staff later this week, I believe. Am I leaving anything out?
I couldn't do it any better.
You could. You're just being generous. Are there any concerns or questions? All right, so we'll continue that process. This will be a multi-month process. We'll see where it goes. So, all right. Fourth item under information and discussion items is compensation of the Board of Supervisors. That was added by Mr. Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, just a few quick points on this before it's taken in a lot of wild directions. I have a note here that says that the board has not had a pay increase substantially since 2002. I remember the date 2002 because in 2002, I was elected the first time. I was 26 years old, and as you all can imagine, there's been quite a lot that's happened macroeconomically in the world in 23 years. So let's keep that in mind. That's number one. Number two, I know how hard this job is and the hours required and how hard you guys work, especially to do the job right and to do it well. And we need people that are going to do it right and do it well and not just sit up here at the dais. That's important because that funnels into my third point, and then I have a motion to make. I'm getting ready to leave this board, and I think we have an interest as a county and as a county government entity, at a minimum, not having artificial barriers or hindrances to attracting the kind of people that can do this job well. and attracting people that we want to see serve in these positions. And they could have kids, and they could have other things that occupy their time, and they could be a lot of things that they look at and they say, you know, for the hours you got to put in, you know, it's just, I can't justify that. If they're good and they have an interest in this county and they want to serve this county, we should want them to serve this county, or at least be willing to throw their hat in the ring and run an election. Otherwise, we end up getting a much smaller candidate pool, and before long, I just don't think the leadership is as well representative of the county as it should be. And that's just my personal opinion. Also, we are behind several of the rural localities that are our peers in this neck of the woods. So, having said all of that, I would like to move that we set a hearing for next meeting, as required by state code, to look at supervisor salaries to bring them in line with our neighbors. And that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
And I second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Barnes?
if this were to pass, it wouldn't go in effect for this current board, be 2026?
I think that's right, Mr. Goodwin. It would go into effect January 1st of after the next election when four board members are up.
1/1/26.
Yeah, so the state code says you would, anything that would go, that would become approved would have to be considered and approved by the board prior to July 1 of an election year. And then that impact would not take place until January 1st of the year following the election. So anything that you would consider for approval now would not take place until January 1st of 2026.
So it would impact the next board, well,
It'll be 3 years from now.
yeah, 3, okay.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am? No?
No, just, so
Okay.
will not impact us. We're not giving ourselves a pay raise. We're giving future board members the pay raise for future elections.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll have that as an action item on the next meeting. Thank you. Next up is under new business is a resolution to amend the contract for engineering and design for the work for the middle school turf fields. And Mr. Coon.
Yes, good evening, Chairman and Board. What we have today is a rendering of what the fields are going to look like, just for your reference. Originally, we were going to put the turf field actually up towards the top of this photo, which is the current field that we use now, but there was a force main that is there, and it just was determined that's not a good spot to put a turf field that is a substantial amount of concrete and work that needs to be done on top of it. So because of it, we've shifted the field down. So now you can see what it will eventually look like. That change does require an additional survey, which was $5,250. And based on that, there were some changes where we were requesting a contingency of $4,750. So it would extend the not to exceed amount from $180,000 to $190,000 for the engineering and design of the turf fields.
I do. So the rendering here, this is going to sit between the metal gym and where the pods are now?
No, ma'am.
Across the street, no?
So this would come beside the middle school, past the trailers and the
Correct, the
metal
pods
gym.
and the metal gym.
So then, yes, this will be right behind the metal gym is where it would end up being. behind
Right, and then the
baseball field.
pods sit right up here. Okay. Yeah, so it's currently where the fields are right now.
There are
There's-
no fields right now. This is trees.
It's trees, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the amended contract for engineering design work as presented by staff.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded that we approve the amendment to the design work. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Before we move on to reports of officers, boards, and standing committees, I would just make a note. We normally don't comment on public, during public comment, so we didn't comment on public comment, but there was a question about the email for the Planning Commission address. If you spell it correctly, it works. Pardon me? Looking at a copy of it, it was misspelled. It was misspelled. You're welcome. All right, so under committee reports, do we have any committee reports? I know we have Mr. Smith here with the committee report on the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Committee that we talked about the last time. So, Mr. Smith, I'll bring you up.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to embarrass Ms. Smith, but if I get one more phone call about people having a great trip to New York, okay, I got 1,000 phone calls. People had a great time on that Parks and Rec sponsored trip to New York. Did a good job.
Let me pile on and say I'm tired of getting input from people that had a great time at the parade this weekend, and there was a tremendous number of people there. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Well, I have a complaint. People went to New York, and I did not get any New York cheesecake brought back. So next year, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
That for next
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Now, in all seriousness, we could go on and on, but Parks and Recreation does a tremendous job in the county. The programs that you put on, from the parades to the festivals to the things at the summertime, I just hear all good things, and obviously the board does too. So very seldom do we get to see you here to thank you personally, so thank you because your leadership matters.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the Tourism Advisory Committee. I've been working with Cindy and Chris to develop a vision statement for tourism in general. And part of that vision statement, there's a clear marketing plan, objectives that we have. Those objectives are to enhance visitor experience, diversify attractions, and strengthen partnerships. And then under that, there's 4 focus areas. One is the product development and marketing campaigns. The second is stakeholder involvement. And then we have performance metrics, and then plan updates. And I highlight that because when you talk about stakeholder involvement, this comes back to the Tourism Advisory Committee. Because what we are looking to do is to establish, and I think you all may have received a document that goes into a little bit more detail about the Tourism Advisory Committee, but we're looking to establish a group of stakeholders that collectively represent the entire county. So when you're talking about the different stakeholders, you can see the list: agritourism, arts, board of supervisor liaison, on through. But what I would like to do, because I feel like sometimes when we talk about tourism, certain people's voices are out there more than others. And I want to make sure we offer an opportunity for everybody throughout the county to be represented, from the eastern to the western part of the county. So this Tourism Advisory Committee would do that. And it would also serve as the stakeholders that we need to be able to make decisions moving forward in regards to tourism that actually aligns with the vision that we're working on for tourism. So what I would like to do, if you all had a chance to take a look at that document, is to actually make a request that the board approves that document.
Have we seen that document?
I don't know. Have we?
It came, it was hot off the presses this afternoon.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay.
That was late. Sorry.
That's okay.
Trying to get here.
What we might do, since it did, if it's okay
Sure.
with you, James, is what we might do is ask that the board approve us to start holding some preliminary meetings with some of these stakeholders, even in advance of the formation of the committee formally,
Okay.
which I think might have been what you and I kind of talked about today. And then we could have the official formation of the committee itself, either at the next meeting or at a meeting very soon after that in January, just so we kind of keep the ball rolling here, even before the committee itself is stood up.
So is this part of, and we talked, I talked at the last meeting about, because now we have Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. So this is part of the process of separating those functions.
Yes,
and part of the reason, I think, I'll state it for me, I'm not putting words in your mouth. Part of the reason is with the TOT increase, there's earmarked money, which is substantial, over $500,000 probably, that has to be by state code driven towards tourism. Am I following along here on the right path?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do we, well, first of all, I
Reading it
guess we
right now.
probably, do you need a vote for that direction, or you just want that direction?
As long as I've got general consensus of the board, I'm fine with it if you all are.
Anybody
Yeah.
anybody have any objection? Anybody have any
No, I
objection?
think it's,
all right, so there's that. And I think probably we could get that as an action item on the next board meeting on the 18th.
Yes, sir.
So, long-term, when we look long-term with Parks and Rec, I mean, where do we see, I hear a lot about the facilities we have, but I also hear a lot of people go, boy, I wish we had a walking trail. I wish we had we can't be all things to all people, and I understand that. But when you look long-term, where's your guidance? What's your direction?
I'm glad you asked. So we've also worked on a vision statement for Parks and Recreation on that side of it as well. Some of the objectives would be facility enhancement as well as expansion. I'm sure some of you are here about pickleball and the growth in pickleball. And I would tell you, as someone that sees it and experiences it almost every day, this is not going to stop anytime soon, because it hasn't reached the youth like it has in other places. So once it becomes a sport at the high school level, once it's played and recognized, then it will slow down. But we're at the point now where the need and the request for pickleball courts, whether inside and outside, we get comments, probably calls every other day about pickleball courts. So part of our strategic approach moving forward, when we talk about facility enhancement or expansion, it would be able to provide facilities that also have multifunctional space, that whether it's the basketball court during this time, it can also be utilized as volleyball court or for pickleball courts. To be able to build facilities that offer that will allow us to be able to offer more programs, but also we lock down space. Right now we have the Betty King Center gym. We have 8 exercise classes going on there a week. We have 2 karate classes going on there a week. We have people in the gym. We have people in what we call the great room. We have some people in our teen rec room. We're running out of space for the programs that we're trying to offer right now, and we're not being able to offer them in the right environment. And again, being able to expand and focus on more facilities, or at least enhancing the facilities that we do have to be able to offer more and to meet the needs that we're seeing from the community. We also need to focus more on our outdoor green space. We have sites that need to be updated, that sites that if we add to would make a big difference. Take Bowler's Mill. If we add a fishing pier now, it would become right now it's used sparingly. If we had a fishing pier or something there, it's a great opportunity for people to get out there and fish, those that don't have a John boat or some way of getting out there on the water. So we have the green space. We need to enhance the green space. We need to do more to update what we have to make it more accessible to individuals with disabilities. I think right now we're in a stage where we're behind. And the more that we try to do as a department, we get to a point, but then we hit that wall, because either we don't have the facility or we don't have the space or what we need to move forward. So we can meet needs in this county up to a certain point, and then we hit a wall.
So, I don't know much about pickleball other than everybody I know plays it. I don't even know how you play it. But I do know, and I want to compliment Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Woolfolk and some other people, that tennis courts can be multi-use, right? Tennis court and pickleball. And the pickleball tennis court at Trevilian's is being completely redone, which, again, that a lot of people in the new part of the Mineral District up that way use it. And so thank you for getting that done before the bad weather started. Do we have indoor facilities for pickleball?
At the Betty Queen Center.
So what, in the basketball court?
Yes.
So how many, I don't even know how big the court is. I don't know anything about it. It's not on ESPN yet, so I haven't seen it. So.
Oh, it
Yes,
is?
it is.
Oh, is it?
Oh,
Okay, well.
Yes, it is.
Players are making
My bad.
millions.
I apologize. I was watching Florida State get
Oh, no.
ripped off from going to the playoffs, so I've been watching football.
All over ESPN.
So how many games can you do at a time?
So we're able to establish 4 courts on the current basketball court that we have. Even with that, we have pickleball 5 days a week there. And we're probably averaging anywhere from 200 to 300 participants a week coming through there.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So we now have a system where it's a card reader, so they have a card that they use, they scan the card, so we can now produce data on the terms of numbers. So when are the prime times, we were able to adjust our schedule based on that information, so we can track and give you exact numbers.
Is it mostly during the day? Is it night, both?
It's during the day right now because we use the gym for night for either basketball practice, cheerleading, exercise classes, so we can't offer anything at night at this point, or in the evening.
If we had additional space for nighttime, I mean, do you think you'd see more utilization?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Would you?
Yes.
I can just add up. Little Zion Church runs 2 courts. They are playing 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, and they have play on Saturdays. And it gets so crowded up there. Even if the rotation, you can't get to play much on 2 courts because and a lot of them are the Betty Queen people and from all over that
Right.
drive so far to play indoor play.
Right.
And also, I've heard you all say about what about the schools using pickleball courts in our gyms in the schools? And I've heard from pickleball players that, like, I said, oh, well, what about Trevilians? They have courts up there at night. And I was told, it's kind of dangerous. Those floors are real slick, and you can slip real easy. And playing on a floor like in the Betty Queen Center and a rubbery type of floor is safer.
Right.
So pickleball players don't like to necessarily play in the elementary school hard gyms.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Since I'm the liaison for the board on Parks and Rec Commission, I can tell you, we talk about pickleball every meeting. And unfortunately, the leader of that conversation is Debbie. She gives James a hard time because pickleball is such a big demand. We have some good friends that are pickleball players. And the last meeting we had, there was a lot of discussion that maybe we need to actually build another gym somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll get to that point because we need more indoor facilities.
There is.
So-
Well, for the sake of your home life, you got 26 days left to fix it, man. So,
So anyhow, all I'm saying is it's a discussion we have
Huge.
every meeting.
how many? I really don't know anything. But how many people are on each team?
It's
4.
2.
Oh, so it's like 10,
Four and a
doubles
quarter
and
time.
10. Okay.
Yes.
So you have 250 people coming through in a week.
At least, yeah.
That's huge.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's
Anybody
growing.
else have any comment?
Yes.
All right, well, I guess budget time's coming up. I'm sure you'll be presenting some of your ideas at budget time, so.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next is board appointments. We do have one appointment to appoint Mrs. Paige Kemp. from-
Mr.
Oh,
Mr.
I
I'm
have
sorry,
one
there's
too.
a typo.
Okay, says Miss, I'm just reading what it says. Mr. Paige Kemp from the Jackson District to the Industrial Development Authority. I assume that is 1/1/24?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think it got appointed at the last meeting, or else I think I overlooked Judd Foster.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I
remember
remember emailing Alex and having a conversation. I think it got overlooked at the last meeting. I see she has it in here because she's so good. She knows what's going on. So appointing Judd Foster to the Water Authority again,
Any other appointments?
reappointing him.
Chairman, I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna make a recommendation, but I'm gonna wait. Anybody got another name to bring forward, next meeting? But I want to recommend Ms. Carson Lewis, as Piedmont Community College Board. Ms. Lola Richardson can't run again. And I bring a resume, but Ms. Carson Lewis taught in Louisa County over 30 years. Her husband Larry was a principal and been involved with education all life. And so, but Ms. Rich, if somebody has got another name to present, but Carson's very interested in taking that appointment. Ms. Richardson's time is up.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to do something that's kind of unusual, but since the board has decided to take a direction of having a board supervisor member on the joint board, we appointed a lady, a month and a half ago, something like that. I want to rescind that appointment, not because of her, but because of our decision as a board to put a board member on the joint board. So part of the motion, I need to make sure that we rescind that particular appointment.
Okay, and I would add, does anybody else have any? So I would add to Mr. Gentry's addition to that, this board did, and I think it was unanimous, vote to appoint Julie Manzari to the Jaunt Board to replace Mr. Gentry. But the board was under, as we found out later, under the impression that we had we had a supervisor appointee and a citizen appointee, and it turns out we have one. Mr. Gentry has served, well, we have two, but Mr. Gentry has served as one of them since I don't know how long.
15 years.
15 years. And I think the board was under the impression that that was a supervisor appointee. And so this is in no way a reflection of Ms. Manzari, but the board feels like in January, when we swear our two new members in, that we would continue, because John, we've had a big budget increase. John, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts going on with John, that we want a supervisor representation on the Jaunt Board. So just want to make sure that's perfectly clear to everybody here. So
Make a motion, we accept the appointments.
thank you.
Second.
And the unappointment. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next up is County Administrator's Report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We already talked about the Christmas events this past weekend. They were amazing despite some rough weather on Friday night. Still a good crowd for that as well. And it was a crowd at the parade. I was there. It was very, very nice. So kudos to James and his staff and the folks who helped out. Just a great day to be in the town of Louisa. There is a Breakfast with Santa coming up this Saturday on the 9th. You must pre-register, so don't just show up. You do need to pre-register to have Breakfast with Santa this Saturday if you want to do that. There's a memo on page 64 from the Planning Commission regarding the 2232 review that they recently undertook. There is also a detail on road improvements, Virginia Business Ready Site Program application, the grant application for the road improvements that we've discussed in the past. That application is in there in case you want to review it. And also, there was a drought designation approved for the state for several counties, including Louisa. That detail is on page 76. Please feel free to share that with your citizens, as they are able to access some assistance funds if they were impacted. So that concludes my prepared remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Goodwin? All right, we do have one public hearing tonight. The public hearing is to approve or deny CUP 2023-06. Christopher and Catherine Meyer, applicants and owners, conditional use permit, and that will be Mr. Eck.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Tom Eglin. I'm the Senior Planner for Louisa County's Community Development Department. Before you tonight is a conditional use permit request 2023-06 to allow for the use agricultural operation on parcel zone residential R2 listed in your application, totaling 42.51 acres. The properties are located north of Old Tollersville Road, Route 667, just outside the town of Mineral northern boundary. The properties are located in the Mineral election district. The subject properties are in the mineral growth area and are designated as low-density residential on the 2040 Louisa County Comprehensive Plan's future land use map. Staff's professional opinion is the proposed agricultural operation would not negatively impact the future land use plan nor the growth area. Furthermore, the proposed request supports the county's goal of maintaining the rural agricultural character of the county. Dating back to 1969, when zoning was created in Louisa County, the subject properties were originally zoned general residential R2, as you can see on the current slide. The applicant has provided a written letter from the Spicer family, which had owned the properties for decades. The letter can be found in your staff packet as enclosure 2 on pages 102 to 104. The Spicer letter details the time frame in which farming operations occurred on the properties going back to the 1930s. Although these properties have a long history of farming operations, both staff and the applicant believe a conditional use permit for the use agricultural operation would eliminate any doubt of the continuous agricultural use on the subject properties since the creation of the zoning ordinance in 1969. Additionally, a conditional use approval letter would allow the agricultural operation to be permitted on 42.51 acres in accordance with the 2021 Land Development Regulations, Section 86-189, permitted uses with a conditional use permit in the general residential R2 zoning district, thus giving the Meyer family peace of mind that their agricultural operation meets the requirements of the current zoning ordinance. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit request to allow the use agricultural operation in the residential general R2 zoning district with 4 conditions shown on the current slide and in your staff packet. On this slide, you'll see conditions 2 is bolded. Condition 2 was added by the Planning Commission, but unfortunately did not make it into your staff packet. Staff asked that condition 2 be added to the motion for the conditional use permit tonight. Additionally, on staff packet page 88, under Planning Commission meeting results and the staff report, the Planning Commission had tasked staff to review the standard conditions used in conditional use permits, as the applicant had concerns about condition 3. Staff has since spoken with the applicant, and staff believes the issue has been resolved, leaving no need to modify the standard conditional use permit language proposed this evening. Both staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of this conditional use permit. This concludes staff's report.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Eglin? I have one particular. So the reason for the C, because currently this is a non-conforming use,
That is
correct?
correct.
Because it has been agriculturally farmed for however long.
That is correct, Chairman.
And I know that when Mr. Spicer was living, hay was cut, so we continue up. So my understanding, and you mentioned it, is this will codify the use and protect the use of the land because of the CUP. I understand that, but I do have an issue. Do you have any idea up to this point how much the applicant has paid the county to get to this point?
I can confirm that. On page 90 of your staff packet, you'll find the application amount of $690 received on the 15th of September.
So I've seen this done one other time since I've been on the board. I do understand the thought process behind it, but I also know that, they could continue to go on and farm without this CUP. I'm going to support this CUP, and I'm actually going to turn the gavel over in a minute since this is in my district to make that motion. But when I make that motion, I'm going to ask that the county reimburse the applicant the $690 that they've paid because it has been a non-conforming use for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So I just wanted to get the amount. And so you said the amount was $690, correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
I don't have any other questions. Anybody else have any other questions? The applicant, I guess, is here because somebody spoke from the crowd. Do you wish to address the board, sir? You don't have to. It's totally up to you.
I have a presentation that is here. If you guys would like to know a little bit more about what our plans are, if not, I can sit back down.
I'm not going to tell you what to do, but we can go from there. So we will open the public hearing. I have 2 cards for the public hearing. One is Jim Lilly. Jim, I'll get to you in a second. The other one wants to speak on this, and they live in the Mineral District, but they didn't put their name on it. So if that's your handwriting and you want to speak, you can come up and speak on this, but I don't know who that is. All right. All right, Gary, then you, okay. Pardon me? Jim Lilly.
Is somebody gonna come up?
Jim, you want to come up?
Mr. Chair and members of the board, my name is Jim Lilly, and I live in Bolton Mineral District. I actually had written out some things And I realized that Jimmy Spicer's letter, which I think is probably the one that you have in there, is going to say an awful lot about the farming operation there. I find myself in a peculiar position because I actually would, I guess, echo the chairman's remarks and some of the other remarks that have been made. And frankly, I don't think this should be approved as a CUP. Again, it's a non-conforming use. It's been there for many, many years. My own knowledge only goes back to 1977, and I remember the cattle being there and the crops in all the fields, including the ones that you had to access from Route 522. But one of the things about this that kind of intrigues me is the fact that it is zoned R2, and I don't think any of us were around here when the zoning came in. But if you go up 522, you have a sort of a curious thing where the first 300 feet was zoned residential and everything behind that was zoned agricultural. It didn't really matter whether it was a single parcel or what was there. So there were a lot of things that weren't known. One of the things that we hear a lot is the word rural. For the most part, rural is trotted out and bandied about by people who are asserting that whatever is proposed is contrary to the rural character and spirit of the county, and in particular, their own little corner. As far as this application goes, that's one of the things that I had as a suggestion was to refund whatever the Myers have spent on this. I know that in addition to the amount that you've mentioned, I believe Mr. Myers paid a lot of copy costs over at the clerk's office and gotten copies of plats and things like that. Most of that's probably cash, and I don't know that he has a real good idea of what he spent on it. But my personal feeling is that they ought to be applauded and not given these conditions that were up there on the board for their operation. Those are pretty arbitrary. They're also kind of subjective, things like something that's contrary, who knows? But I think they ought to be applauded for promoting, maintaining, continuing the rural character of Louisa County, which
15 seconds.
Something that is the guiding principle and supposed to be at the heart of every action that's taken by this board and by the various departments and agencies of the county. So giving them back the money, I think, is not enough. They should be able to continue with their agricultural operation and not have any burden of any oversight from the county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Griffin, did Mr. Lilly cover it, or do you have something to add?
I threw my back out, so
Yeah,
I don't
that-
have to sit down again.
No, you're fine.
It's hard to get up. I just want to kind of.
You have to introduce yourself, Mineral
I'm
District.
Gary Griffith. I live in the Mineral District, 815 Almaguey Nail Drive, and sort of along the same line of what Jim said, but, you know, I listened to this, and here's a, you know, property that's gone on and on as a farming operation, and now to keep doing that, they have to ask for a CUP. That CUP says any of the Board of Supervisors can come over to their property anytime they want to and walk around on their property and inspect it. I just don't understand why we're taking this kind of power over people. You know, we're gonna say, yeah, we'll give you a CUP, you can keep farming, and then you add, everybody here can come to their property anytime they feel like it. I just don't get it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all the cards I have. Is there anyone else?
Ed Jarvis, Town of Mineral. I've talked to Mr. Myers. In fact, I'm the town representative on the Planning Commission, and certainly this falls within the 2-mile boundary for the Town of Mineral. Wearing my acting town manager hat and stuff, we certainly support Mr. Myers' endeavor to continue the farming and stuff. And we helped collect some of the data, and it was interesting as we went out and talked to some of the landowners next. There's a woman who actually used to breed horses, and she didn't even know that it had been changed from agricultural to R2. And she was quite surprised at that. So, again, I just want to support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board during this public hearing? I'm looking at you. Yes, sir.
David Sexton, Louisa is my district that I vote, but I wanted to pledge my support for Mr. Myers as far as getting this turned back over to farmland. I grew up on the property that backs up to this. When I was a kid, all I did was run through those fields, play in the creeks back there and everything. And when it comes to seeing kind of the way the county's going with everything turning into solar fields or data centers and things like that, I'm asking that the board please give this man a chance to take this and turn it back to farmland instead of seeing it maybe stay residential and get turned into a subdivision or something like that. So I just wanted to pledge my support for somebody that's trying to go back to farming and raising cattle and all those things he's going to do. He's going to bring things to the county that we might not have an abundance of, so just want to pledge my support and thank you guys for the time. Women, ma'am, also, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? All right, if not, we'll close the public hearing, bring this back to the board. Any other comments from the board? I'm going to turn the gavel over to Mr. Barlow to call for the vote, but I do have a couple comments. This is in the Mineral District, and it's a beautiful piece of property, Mr. Meyer. I knew Ronnie Spicer. I'm sure he would be glad to see this continue in the aspect that you want this to continue in. So I'm going to make a motion to approve CUP 2023-06 with the caveat that the county also refund the $690 filing fee that was paid to the county for this CUP.
Second.
Have a motion to have a second?
Yes, second.
Oh, you were the second. Good enough. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Mr. Barnes?
So move.
Second.
Second that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying